Hello, welcome back to the YouTube channel of Bethel Evangelical Free Church Hanley. I'm Pastor Gervais Charmley. This is another historic English church. This is in Lincolnshire and this is St. Peter's, Claypole. St. Peter's is a wonderful example of the decorated style of architecture that was most fashionable in the 14th century. It has been altered and it's a massive Victorian restoration, but the structure itself is very much a decorated building with all that entails. It was a period when stonemasons were becoming more confident in what they did. Windows became larger as window glass became more common. Arcades became broader. The pointed arch, often referred to as Gothic, although of course it's nothing to do with the Goths, is ubiquitous, and everywhere there is that which gives the period its name, the proliferation of carved decoration. At its most impressive, of course, you have decoration all over the place. This is not one of the more, shall we say, extravagant examples, but it is an impressive one. So we'll have a look around and see what we can see. As usual, then, we start at the west end. Here we are behind the font. We'll get a better look at that when we go round, because at the moment it's, well, the side we're looking at is in shadow. We're under the tower, which is one of the older parts of the church, and is probably, I'm looking at the architecture, probably 13th century. We move forward. And just turn around and have a look at this window here. Here we have Zacharias and Elizabeth, the parents of John the Baptist. And this is in memory of Mrs. Elizabeth Muggeridge of 17 Phillimore Gardens, Kensington, who gave £850 of the 3,000 raised by the Reverend George Averill, M.A., rector, for the restoration of this church, and promised another 500 when she died suddenly at Bayreuth on July the 24th, 1892, aged 78 years. And she, in fact, is her face is that of Elizabeth. It's not uncommon in those days. You'll notice Elizabeth is holding the infant John the Baptist. So we move forward, and we come to here the font. This is quite a common type in the area. It's a decorated tub, and you can see this profusion of decoration here. Over there is the south door with that very close framing, so it's a medieval door. And as we look up here, there is a rood screen. This rood screen has been restored, but a good amount of it is actually medieval, and the pulpit is medieval, so we'll have a closer look at that in a moment. We move around then into the north aisle, and no longer required for seating. There's a children's area and some books for sale there. The north transept is now occupied by the organ, and we have here a window in memory of Harry Goulby, St. Nicholas, patron saint of children, St. Peter, patron saint of the church, and St. Hugh, of course, of Lincoln Diocese. This is the medieval pulpit. Medieval pulpits are often quite narrow compared with modern pulpits, on the basis of which it has been noted that medieval priests were generally quite slender. The canopy is at least partially old. It has been restored, of course it's been restored, and it's a pulpit that is over 500 years old. It would originally have been painted, perhaps with figures of saints on the panels. The rood screen again would have been painted. The predominant colours would have been red and green, both of which were relatively cheap pigments, but also very impressive. We have to remember, Hollywood, please take note, that the Middle Ages, people liked colour. They like colour everywhere, colourful wall paintings, colourful painted furniture, colourful clothes, greens and reds and blues, not browns. Through the screen now, the chancel is very impressive here, very large and quite roomy. No stained glass, no donors came forward. There's not a lot of stained glass in this church. The money that was raised for restoration went for the most part on actually restoring the building rather than adorning it, which means it needed to be restored. 18th century communion rails, and of course within the rails we have the sedilia and piscina. The sedilia, these 3 stone seats, the priest assisting at Mass, and of course the piscina, that's for washing the sacred vessels afterwards. We're not a huge distance here from Sibthorpe, and there is a carved Easter sepulchre, by no means as impressive as that at Sibthorpe. Sacristy door. The sacristy was a combination vestry and strong room. You've got your little windows cut in it. And here we have the most impressive memorial here. All the ones in the chancel here are either to clergy or their wives. This is to the Reverend John Beaver, only son and heir of the late John Beaver, Esquire of Heckmondwick in the county of York. In the year 1779 he was inducted into the North Rectory of this church, the duties of which he laboured to discharge with exemplary punctuality for a period of 41 years, his vigilant and zealous attention to the spiritual welfare of his flock. His liberal and unostentatious benevolence for the poor, his admirable government of a numerous family, his strict integrity and habitual piety, these were traits which made his character be respected in life and his memory to be revered and cherished in death. Below is listed his wife. She was 83 when she died. He dies 1820. She dies 20 years later. And 5 of their children who died young are buried here. He was succeeded by his son, the Reverend Thomas Beaver. At the time, the rectory was at least notionally divided into a north and a south rectory. Sorry about that. That's me making a mistake with one of the controls. The north and south rectories. The one would take the morning service, the other the evening. In 1863 they were formally united, although it had been a while, I think, since there had been a south rector. The rectory was lived in by the north rector, obviously the south rector had his own house, which was smaller. So that's the view from the chancel. You can see here 2 old roof lines. As churches are altered over time, the roof line changes, usually upwards. There are cases where they go downwards, but normally it's upwards because it's about lifting people up, and also it's about doing things like this rather nice wooden ceiling up there, probably 15th century. So we can continue here to the west, back through the screen, and you can see here some evidence of the Victorian restoration, which is very much based on what it would have been in the Middle Ages, except of course without the paint. There is a big Lady Chapel in the south transept. The veneration of Our Lady was a major thing in medieval England, even more so than in some parts of Europe, other parts of Europe. And so we have a Lady Chapel with its own sedilia and piscina. And up here we have a big Victorian window scenes from the life of St. Peter. The Lady Chapel here doesn't appear to be used very much, which is, again, fine. It all depends how they do things in the parish. The more high church parishes will use it a lot, but here a lot of stuff has been moved in here. partially I suspect for restoration purposes and partly because they couldn't find anywhere to put it. Big organ on the north side, filling basically the north transept. Up here we have a window, one of two, that would have lit the rood, the carved wooden representation of the crucifixion, which would have been above the screen and mounted on the rood loft. Down then, see these nice clustered columns. Again, this ornamentation. And here we have the Second World War memorial. It's notable for the fact that one of the men recorded on it, Arthur Stewart King's scarf, won the VC, which is often recorded on war memorials because, of course, the VC is the highest decoration in the British military, and therefore it's a great honour for a man to receive it. They're normally, almost always receive, not always, but very often they're received posthumously because it involves so much courage that you lose your life doing it. And this is the First World War memorial. It's notable that actually fewer men, just fewer men on the First World War and more on the Second, which is very unusual. Normally you will find these memorials there'll be many more on the First World War, but not always, as you can see here. The door, again, this close framing. You can see the lock there, and that there is a small door set into the big one. You can see, just about see there, that hole that would allow a beam to be placed inside, sealing the door. Well, right, so we'll go outside now. And so we're now outside here at Claypole, and you can see this wonderful building. It's difficult to film it from outside because you've got the great big spire, but I thought, well, for this particular shot it's best to have the lower part of the church in view, particularly you see the transept here, and then here's the nave with clerestory, and then this big tower that goes behind me is the chancel. So we'll have a look around the outside and again see what we can see. So here we go, got this wonderful ashlar stone. I suspect it's Ancaster stone, relatively local, beautiful building stone, and then that slender spire that can be seen for miles, in the right direction of course. There are hills around here after all. And we then proceed around the building. We have here the memorial, the Goulby family, and a memorial to Harry Goulby of Cleveland, Ohio, loving and beloved benefactor of Claypole, his native village, passed away January the 18th, 1929, aged 64 years. Well done, thou good and faithful servant. So it's not just Scotland and Ireland where you have these cases of local men who go away to the United States and send money home and remember their native village. The architecture is beautiful. There's carved heads there. There are gargoyles. Remember, it's a gargoyle if it gurgles when it rains. Gargoyles are decorated water spouts. They are not just grotesques. And so we have the porch here. You'll notice just there's a door that would have been a separate door into the Lady Chapel, which would have had its own priest at one point perhaps. Perhaps it's a chantry. The door. Medieval door. You see that smaller door on the inside, and carved red paint. It would have been painted not least just as a means of preservation, that it means that the weather has to get through the paint before it gets to the wood. And here we have a lot of these older memorials. You can see the older gravestones lean over. This is because the stones were put up before the grave had settled, and so when it settles the stones settle as well. We shall try have to move back and get a good view up, good pan up at the tower and the spire. A spire, of course, is an extra bit of complexity. It's something that you've got to put a lot of effort into. It costs more money, so there is a status element as well as being a message: lift up your hearts, we lift them up unto the Lord. Spires are, this sort of spire, it's what they call a recessed spire. You've got this parapet and then the spire comes out of it. It makes for a more elegant looking spire than the older brooch spire, which have a beauty of their own, of course, but were certainly regarded by masons and architects, if we can use that term, of the decorated period as being rather heavy and not fitting in well with their ideas as to what a church building should look like. So we don't want to be rude about either group, really, but just to say that there are different ideas. And here's the north side. Now, it's always more difficult to get the north side because of the sun, where the light goes. Also, I have to divide time between looking at the viewfinder, looking at the little screen on the camera, and not breaking an ankle in rabbit holes. North doors are often disused today. They were used in the medieval and the pre-Reformation rite of baptism. They were opened as a part of the idea in those days was that there was a bit of an exorcism as part of baptism, and so it's known as the devil's door, with the idea that the devil flies out the door there. Little lean-to shed there. Very nice covering on the roof. Green roof. I don't think that's the old rectory, but it might have been. We have the sacristy up here, which looks to only have been a single story. Often they were two-story, and sometimes there was rooms for the priest up above. Big windows in the chancel. There's a number of these big, impressive medieval churches around here. There's clearly quite a bit of money around here at the time, and then there wasn't, which is why a lot of them, even today, they don't have stained glass in most of the windows. You can see there one of the windows that lit the rood, and up there's a window in the gable that's now been blocked because of that low roof. That means that no longer has any function. It could only light the inside of the roof space, and that's not actually very useful. Buildings like this remind us that this idea that some people have that the Middle Ages is a period of ignorance, it just doesn't satisfy all the facts. Because the people who built this, even if they didn't have a formal understanding, they must have understood things to do with stresses, all the engineering challenges of building a structure like this. And boy, what a structure. So there we have it. It's a beautiful building here at Claypole. So here we have it, St. Peter's Claypole. So thank you for watching, and may God bless you and keep you until next time.